Good evening. I'm Anthony WHUR, and I currently serve as the Provost and Chief Academic Officer at Howard University. And it is my distinct honor and pleasure to welcome you to this next in the series of King lecture program that we're conducting this year. As many of you have been introduced already, the King Chair for this year is Ms. Donna Brazile. You've met her at our previous sessions. Ms. Brazile served as the chairman of the Democratic National Committee and has been in various other roles as a media personality, as a commentator, and also as a faculty member, both at Georgetown University and at other institutions. This evening, her guest and our guest is Ms. Greta Van Susteren. And one of the things that I've also learned about Ms. Van Susteren is, in addition to her illustrious career as a news anchor, television commentator, and political commentator, she also has had significant teaching experience. So we're pleased to welcome Ms. Donna Brazile, who I will ask to come up now and who will also provide an introduction for Ms. Van Susteren. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, and thank you all for coming out tonight. It is my great honor to introduce to many of you and to welcome Greta Van Susteren to the campus of Howard University. Greta is currently the anchor plugged in with Voice of America. For over 15 years, she was the anchor at Fox News On the Record with Greta Van Susteren. She has also been an anchor at CNN as well as MSNBC. She's author of a recent book, and this is the reason why I know this book is something that everyone here should get a copy. It was published last November 2017 by Simon & Schuster, entitled Everything You Need to Know About Social Media Without Having a Kid. Greta, I still need a kid. Greta is the proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin and also Georgetown Law School. She has been an attorney practicing law. She knows a lot about legal issues, and we're going to talk about that. But this is my first time having an opportunity to talk to Greta about some of the news of the day. So Greta, please join me on stage so we can get this conversation underway. Thank you. Well, that makes three of us. I'm sure there are other professors here who've taught all over.
We should probably confess that we're friends.
Oh, we've been friends for a long time. I have looked to Greta for not just career advice and counsel, but I've been honored to be a part of many of your excellent shows, highly rated shows on cable television. So it's great to have you.
But more than ever friends.
Well, I'm not going to tell people that Greta is one of my good ace boom coon friends, and I learned a lot from her. And last year, especially when I was trying to figure out what I would do with my life again, especially after writing a book, Greta gave me some great counsel and great advice. So thank you, Greta, for being a wonderful soul and a great sister. I want to get right to some of the breaking news today. As you well know, there was another fatal shooting today at a Rite Aid facility in Aberdeen, Maryland. This is the third workplace shooting this week alone. In Wisconsin, there was a shooting at a software company, and there was a shooting in Pennsylvania at the courthouse. What are some of the solutions to this increasing problem of gun violence in the United States? Is there a legal solution, a political solution, a legislative solution? Should this solution be thought about as something that we might have to focus on from just the community?
All right, my thought is sort of it's all of the above. Every time we have one of these horrible shootings, the first thing we hear is gun control. And look, gun control from a horrible political standpoint is a great fundraiser for Democrats and Republicans because they all get to argue about the Second Amendment. And that's probably the most distasteful part about it. We never sort of look for solutions. We do an awful lot of blaming in this country, and we point a lot of fingers. Right now, the last time I looked, I think there's something like 300 million guns out there. Think of that, 300 million guns. That's almost a gun for every person in the country. If we put gun control in right now, just to look at that solution, what are we going to do about all those guns? We still have all those guns out there. And so, gun control, I'm not in favor of these automatic weapons. I don't know why, and nobody needs them. I know you don't hunt with them. I don't understand why people have these automatic weapons, or how you can do some adjustments to them to make something that's not automatic. But when I was practicing law in the District of Columbia, I was a criminal defense lawyer for about 10 or 12 years trying cases down the Superior Court. We had the toughest gun control in the country, but every single one of my clients could get a gun. It's like people who want guns for whatever reason, they can find them. And we had the toughest gun control in the country at the time. At least I was told. Oftentimes they just sort of, they'd get them, from their friends, or they'd drive over into another state, into Virginia or Maryland, which I think the laws were a little bit laxer. Gun control. If gun control were the answer, I'd be totally for it. But I think we're farther down the road than that. Because we can't get all the guns back. So what do we do? I guess that when I say all the above, it's a lot of these shootings, and this is not perfect, but if you see something, say something, because a lot of these people who are using guns is somebody saw something, or saw some weird behavior, or saw something, or someone comes into a gun shop and buys all this ammunition, or someone's walking around his property, wearing all sorts of weapons and acting odd. So it really is like we have to do a lot of citizen self-policing, and try to report things when we see things. But this is if the answer were easy, we wouldn't have this problem, and all our politicians before us would have solved this problem. It's just not that easy. For the life of me, it's like when I grew up, we didn't have metal detectors in schools, and I see this. And I see schools. It's the whole idea that you need a metal detector in a school. That's it's so alien to me. But the schools have gotten so dangerous. So what do we do? And do we want I don't want students dangerous. And danger. But yet we have we have to put metal detectors. What has happened to us as adults that we've created this environment? I'll take it a little bit further. I'm very sort of anti our generation this way. Is that my generation has schools in Detroit that have lead in the water. Right. My generation has got schools that have to have metal detectors. What in the world is our generation doing that we have created this? Which takes me down another road.
So you're saying baby boomers, we're responsible for this gun violence and what's going on with the clean drinking water in Detroit and Flint?
I don't think we're responsible, but I do think that we have an obligation to leave this country and leave the next generation better off than we got it. And if we got it where we had clean water, if we got it where there was not as much gun violence, we ought to leave in better conditions. So I don't say we're responsible, but we certainly have not been responsible in seeking solutions so that we could make it a better place.
I want to get back to criminal justice reform a little bit later, but let's talk about another big story that's breaking, and that is Judge Kavanaugh. We know that he has the votes to get through the Senate committee. The Republicans control the United States Senate. But should they delay the vote to give Dr. Christine Blasey Ford an opportunity to be heard?
Well, I think if she comes on Monday, they won't have to necessarily delay the vote. Although they were expected to do it this week, I don't think they'll necessarily delay it. So,
Okay.
Yes, she should be heard.
And what conditions, if any, should be met in order for her to come before the United States Senate? Do you think, judging from what happened to Anita Hill 27 years ago, by the way, where were you 27 years ago?
I was watching on TV, watching Charles Ogletree, who was one of the best criminal lawyers in the country. He's from Washington, D.C., or he practiced here for a long time. But I was watching on TV. I was at CNN.
You know what I was doing 27 years ago?
You probably went to in high school?
No, I was a little older. I was the advanced person helping the women from the House march across the Capitol tarmac to go and demand that Anita Hill be heard. So I go back to this issue. I work for Eleanor Holmes Norton, who remains the congressman from the District of Columbia. Nita Lloyd, Jolene Arnsell, Pat Schroeder, Patsy Mink, and Barbara Boxer. I led them across the tarmac. I was an advanced person. I was a staffer.
So, and a little kid at the time.
Yeah, in 27 years, What have we learned in the last 27 years?
I don't know how much we've learned, but I mean, this is a time, this is very disturbing, this time, because these are very serious allegations, and at the same time, it's very serious to sexually assault, it's very serious to be falsely accused. So we've got that situation before us. I look at this in part through the prism, the eyes of a lawyer. I think that this is another moment where we're going to have a lot of difficulty in showing dignity. We need to show dignity to both people, because if you've made up your mind, if you believe that she was sexually assaulted, or you believe that he's being falsely accused, I don't know where you get that, because we have not heard from either one of them. And what's very dangerous in a political environment is that oftentimes people don't wait for the facts, but they take sides. And it's very easy to take sides when it's a political opinion that you might have. Like if you want him on the bench, then you're going to say that she's making it up. If you don't want him on the bench, he's a horrible assaulter, sexual assaulter. And I think that's is providing such a disservice to the American people, because I don't know what happened. I really want to hear from both of them. And of course, this is a he says, she says. Most sexual assault cases are done privately. They're not done out on a stage with a bunch of witnesses. But in the courtroom, we listen to people and we judge credibility. We look for corroborating factors, try to piece it together, what did or did not happen. So it's not easy. It's not listening to them isn't necessarily going to be a certainty that you're going to know for sure, but at least you have a better idea of who you think is more credible. And of course, there are a lot of factors to weigh. For some people, the fact that it happened when they were juveniles. If you get arrested as a juvenile, in the court system, you're treated differently than if you're not a juvenile. However, this is not a courtroom. This is a confirmation for a lifelong appointment, which is extremely serious. It's interesting, and let me just digress for a second. What's one of the great things about our nation is that we lend power. We lend it to the president for 4 years, we lend it to the House for 2 years, and we lend it to the Senate for 6 years. We don't give power. Not like someplace, we don't give it, we lend it. The sole exception to that, though, is the judiciary. We are actually giving power. This is a lifetime appointment. So I take this as, I take the scrutiny of this nominee almost a little more seriously than I would someone where we only lend power, because this is a done deal. This is a done deal. Whoever gets confirmed, that's a done deal. So I think a tough scrutiny is important, even if it's very painful. And this is going to be painful to her. It's going to be painful to him, and it's going to be painful to all the rest of us who want this process to be the most dignified possible process with a very difficult issue, so that we get a nominee that is qualified to be the Supreme Court justice. Now that's another issue. Is what does it mean to be a qualified justice? And that's extremely fluid depending on who you talk about. What someone you may think is qualified, I might not think is qualified. Does it mean that the person follows the law? Does it mean the person's a decent human being? Does it mean the person has a wide interest in the law? The people, wide experience. So that's a little bit more difficult in terms of what it means to qualify. But because this is giving power, we gotta get this one as right as we can and as fair as we can. And it's not really about do you like him or not like him, but whether or not he sort of fits the constitutional contours of what a Supreme Court justice should be.
Should the FBI investigate this matter before the Senate completes its work?
I don't know what they get out of it. I don't know give me hypothetically, because if you think as the Senate, the FBI, they're going to go on, they're going to talk to all the students at Holton Arms, they're going to say she was great, then they're going to go to Georgetown Prep and they're going to say he's great. And it's like, I don't know. I think this is a job for the Senate. They want to be U.S. senators. They all want to be it. So this is their job to make. This is their investigation. This is their job, the way I look at it, and they better do it right. But they can call some of her friends or some of his friends that might have some information, that might have some recollection. It's theoretically possible that they could both be mistaken. This is a bunch of kids they're young people drinking. I mean, we have no idea at this point. But I think this is the Senate's job, and they don't want to do it. They want to, just like I have a real gripe about how we elect these people to be in Congress to pass laws, and they pass these laws and then they send it over to these agencies who write the rules that really affect us. And we didn't vote for these people because the congressman ducked the tough question in terms of setting what the law should actually be. But anyway, that's my gripe. But this is the U.S. Senate's job, and they better do it right.
But President George Herbert Walker Bush in 1991 decided to give Anita Hill an opportunity to talk to the FBI, to talk to investigators. Why won't President Trump allow that to happen?
I don't think, what, he probably should, because he's going to get criticized if he doesn't. I just don't think, what are we going to get out of it? That's the point. Maybe we will, maybe we won't, but what's an FBI investigation entail? I just don't know what we would get out of it. I don't know what we get out of it. But I see this as primarily a job of the Senate, and they can send people out to investigate. They can talk to friends, and they can do all this, and they can hold hearings. But if it would somehow shed light on it and be of value, I'm all for it. I just don't know what the FBI could do at this point.
Dianne Feinstein has come under a lot of criticism for not releasing this information or providing the name of this individual to the United States Senate. Was she wrong in holding back this information?
Well, if you're a Republican, she was. If you're a Democrat, no. That's how divided we are. No, look, 20/20 hindsight's a lot of it's a lot easy to come up with how you would have done it and be critical. She did, as I learned from you, turn it over to the Ethics Committee, which seems like a pretty smart thing. She didn't just sit on it. So I think she did take reasonable steps. People can differ about whether it was a good step or not, but she didn't sit on it. So, I tip my hat to her. She was trying to do what she thought was right. She probably was trying to use some good judgment, realizing that, that this would cause this huge, explosion as it has. And she probably wanted to do it in a very sort of methodical way. And certainly, she didn't run to the cameras. She turned it over to the Ethics Committee. And that seems like a pretty good idea to me. I mean, pretty reasonable.
Especially because Dr. Ford wanted to remain anonymous.
Yeah, so... Yeah, she was. Dianne Feinstein was not grandstanding. She was. You may not vote for Dianne Feinstein, but I don't think I've ever seen. I've never thought that she was political as much as I thought she was voting her thoughts and convictions.
But Greta, in this era, this Me Too era, some people are not fully aware of the difference between sexual harassment and sexual assault. As a lawyer, as an attorney, can you elaborate on what is the legal definition of sexual harassment versus sexual assault,
right,
since we're having this conversation?
All right, we're in the District of Columbia, so I'll tell you what the definition of simple assault was when I was practicing law, and I assume that it still is, but I don't know. It's putting someone in the fear of being hurt, basically. You don't have to touch the person. Like I could say right now, Donna, I'm going to hit you over the top of your head. And if she thought that I was going to do it, and I had the present apparent ability to do it, which I can because I'm 6 inches from her, that's assault. If I went and did it from a telephone, if I got my, we don't have telephone booths anymore, do we? We don't have those anymore, do we?
No, I haven't seen one lately.
Okay, if I took my cell phone and went 2 blocks and said the same thing and called her on her phone, that wouldn't be simple assault because I have no present apparent ability to do it. So you don't actually have to touch to do assault. But for the most part, most people won't convict or say unless you actually do have some unwanted touching. And that can be groping, it can be rape, it can be anything unwanted touching, and probably in a sexual manner, like ripping a woman's clothes off or a man's clothes off. If it's unwanted, would be seen as a sexual assault. Rape, you all know what that is. So that's
no means no.
No means no.
Right.
But sexual harassment is really an intimidation. It's really trying to make someone feel less in the environment, or to make someone feel like that his or her job is on the line if he doesn't do something. So it's really sort of a really rude intimidation, I think is probably the right way to do it. And it has, of course, a sexual overtone because it's usually man and a woman, but it could be, gay couples could do that to each other too, or gay men and gay man in the workplace, or women.
Well, we are weeks away now from the 2018 midterm election, and Special Counsel Mueller is investigating possible links between the Trump campaign and Russian officials. Do you think Well, let me ask you, what is the significance, again, from a legal perspective, of Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort agreeing to cooperate with special counsel?
Okay, I'm a former criminal defense lawyer, so I always be scared to death. Okay, scared to death if someone's like, who's going to cooperate. I mean, that's like the worst they could think, because you don't know what they're going to say. Now, if Manafort and what's his name?
Cohen?
Cohen know nothing, if they have nothing, then that doesn't matter. If they have no information that could in any way hurt somebody. Now, obviously, we're thinking about the president, but if they have no bad stuff on the president doesn't have to worry. There's another part of this, though, that's rather distressing to all of us lawyers. Cohen's his lawyer.
Right.
And, when I practiced law, I mean, your lawyer was your last safe person. And there's something really troubling about having your lawyer testify against you. Now, it's not an absolute privilege, attorney-client privilege. Like, you can't, plan to do a bank robbery with your client and think that that's somehow protected. You can't do criminal stuff. But I'd say, I don't know what the Michael Cohen, Donald Trump stuff is, but just as for starters, as a defense lawyer, that's a red flag for me. I don't know what's going on there. I'll tell you what I think is also interesting. The sentencing, I think, is coming up soon.
Yes.
And usually, you want, if you're a prosecutor, you hold the sentencing out there, and you want the person to testify first at the grand jury and the trial before you have the sentencing, so that if the person breaks bad and suddenly gets on the witness stand and says, no, I don't think, so-and-so did anything wrong, that you can then at sentencing hammer him, make sure he gets or she gets the worst sentence. So I actually, if I were to read the tea leaves, is that if I were Trump's lawyers, I'd be terrified. I always was. If someone's like his lawyer and someone who was on his campaign, but for a short time, that would terrify me, because I was always an alarmist as a defense lawyer for my client. But I would also feel a little bit better that the sentencing isn't being held off, because that may just mean that Mueller's trying to clean up things. But I tell you, this is all just reading the tea leaves and guessing, because even if you are his lawyer, you still are guessing, because you don't know what's out there. It's a complete unknown. And you go out there and you act like everything's fine and dandy, but I tell you, things, you don't feel like things are fine and dandy, because you are really flying blind.
Mr. Mueller has gotten several indictments, over 100 criminal counts, 3 companies. Do you think Special Counsel Mueller's investigation is a witch hunt, as the president alleges, or is it something that we should be supportive of because we need to know what happened in 2016?
First of all, all these crimes he's gotten so far, they're like financial crimes unrelated to Trump, right, so far. No relation to Trump. My first question is, where's our Department of Justice Department? Why did it take a special counsel? What in the world are they doing that why are we having to outsource the prosecution? What's with that? We've got a whole Defense Department. We've got local prosecutors, state prosecutors, U.S. attorneys, and yet it takes a special prosecutor to finally, to identify these crimes. That's the first thing. Second thing is that, if you are old enough to remember back to the old Ken Starr days with President Clinton. Now that was an independent counsel, that was a specific statute that created a special as independent counsel, and he was actually selected by the judges of the U.S. Court of Appeals. That statute is now sunset. That's gone away, which is why you have a special prosecutor, which is appointed by the Attorney General. In this case, though, the Attorney General recused himself, so it was the number 2 at the Justice Department. So we vote. But the problem is that lawyers don't like this sort of outsourcing and the spreading of this and sort of letting prosecutors, pretty much do a lot more than we expected. I would have much preferred this, that when Mueller came across these crimes in investigation, that he send them back to the Justice Department. That's he has a specific assignment, and I think he needs to narrow his investigation to his very specific assignment. And I'm not saying that those crimes should go uninvestigated or uncharged or unprosecuted, but I don't think a special prosecutor put it back in the Justice Department. He runs across it, send it right back to the Justice Department.
Well, I have another question on the Justice Department in a minute, but let me ask you about the president. The president yesterday complained about Attorney General Sessions. Do you think that the Attorney General has reasons to worry about his job?
Yeah, I think after the midterms, most people think he's, as they say, toast. He's out. after the midterms. And the way that's playing out in the public, none of us has ever seen anything like that. Usually the way people are fired in cabinets is you invite the person in the Oval Office and you have a little talk, and then the person resigns. You ask for a resignation. It's never played out in public like this, but of course we've never seen a presidency like this. I think everyone agrees on that. But even like the firing of Comey, James Comey, remember he was out in California at an FBI meeting, and I think he saw it like on a TV screen, on a monitor in the room that he had been fired. This is not the way I would do it. If I thought that I wanted to get rid of someone in my cabinet, the cabinet does serve at the pleasure of the president.
Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter, said it's wrong to talk about impeaching Donald Trump.
It's wrong to talk about it?
Yes.
For whom to talk about it?
This is, Jimmy Carter said it's wrong to talk about impeaching Donald Trump. Do you agree or disagree with the former president?
Well, I mean, big picture, anyone can say what he wants. We can all talk about that. Whether it's smart to do it, it depends on who's talking about it. There's criticism of Trump, but what's he done? That's the problem. It's an awful lot of noise in this town, and we're all rattled. And he tweets like I've never seen anything like it. I think politically it's not a smart move on the part of the Democrats, because I think it revs up the Republican base to go out for midterms. So I think maybe if Carter's talking about it politically, that it was wrong, meaning strategically not good for his party, the Democrats, that might be a good idea. I think I've never seen the nation so revved up like this in my life. Everybody's mad. Everybody's taking sides, and everybody's mad. People, I don't know what your family dinners are like or friends or anything, but everyone's sort of like walking on, pins and needles. Like, we don't want to say the wrong thing in front of people because you don't want to be misinterpreted either. Wrong to talk about it? Look, if the Republicans win the midterms, you're not going to hear about impeachment again. You're not going to hear about it. If the Democrats win the midterms and they take control of the House, they may do that. It'll make a difference who controls the Senate. If the Republicans control the Senate, yet the Democrats still go through an impeachment, you may ask why, because they're not going to win in the Senate. Are they doing it because they have a deep conviction this is the right thing to do it, or are they doing it for show? Fair question. If the Democrats win the House and the Senate, then we're talking differently, because then they would have the ability to do that. But Carter may be talking about the fact that so far it's like, what's the impeachable offense? What's the high crimes and misdemeanors that Trump has done? And that's what impeachment's about. That's what you impeach him, high crimes and misdemeanors. The fact that he tweets, that's not a high crimes and misdemeanor. The fact that, President Clinton's bad behavior, his bad behavior, that was not good for his marriage, but I don't think it was high crimes and misdemeanors. So that and the Republican.
And he was acquitted in the Senate.
Yeah, and he was acquitted. So unless high crimes and misdemeanors is something serious.
Yes.
It means like sending at least. It's whatever Congress decides it is, but I think that historically you can say that it's a very serious stuff. You send your nation to war. You use the FBI against your people. You use the IRS against the people. But rude tweeting, saying bad things about your attorney general in public, calling an investigation a witch hunt. What else?
Well, there are so many.
That to me is like if my parents were alive and I was doing that, I'd be in big trouble. But it's like I don't think that's high crimes and misdemeanors, that behavior. Now, if something turns up differently, we haven't gotten there. We haven't gotten to the end of the Mueller investigation. But let's say that the Mueller investigation turns up something significant. That's a whole different story. But where we are today, now, with an incomplete investigation, the Democrats talking about impeachment, I think in part is to raise money. Look, Republicans, Democrats, they play on the emotions of the American people. You may not agree with me, but they know what raises money. You know, it's pretty obvious what raises money. You know, abortion, money, 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 both sides. You know, money. You know, the ones who are pro-abortion, the ones who are anti-abortion, they get money over the transom. Same thing with guns. So, and the poison in this whole thing, and a lot of this is money.
Well, what I've seen lately from the Democrats is they're talking more about infrastructure, checks and balances, and making sure that we have an economy that works for all people. But then again, I'm looking at Democratic mail, which comes practically every day.
Can we go back to one thing about Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Okay. This is something that bothers me about the Kavanaugh nomination. We'll go back to my whole discussion about how we give power. There are papers that have not been turned over. I believe in transparency.
90%, I believe, of his.
I don't care if it's 90. It's got to be 100. That's my problem. Is that like, let's say it's 99.9, but you hold back the one that's like, you know, whatever. But I think there's got to, when you give power, there's got to be transparency so that we know what we got. And the reason these papers are being held back are under the executive privilege. He worked in the Bush White House, and President Bush holds executive privilege over these documents. And President Bush has an absolute right to do that, 100%. But that, to me, if President Bush is unwilling to waive that, then I think we need another nominee, because I don't think we can have hidden documents. I don't think the American people will ever be satisfied, whether, you know, especially if you know, they'll ever be satisfied unless we get all those documents. And it is undeniable that he was in the White House when there are very important issues that were being discussed. Memos going back, and I realize we want to protect the presidential advisors to advise the president. I got that. That's why we have the privilege. But we've got, we had torture, the issue of torture. That was a huge discussion, and how we interrogate people, enhanced interrogation, whatever you want to call it. But we also had surveillance. Those are very important things. And I sort of would like to know, if he wrote about it, I would like to know about it, and I'm sorry that he, you know, that, I mean, I understand why President Bush doesn't want to release him. I got that, but the problem is we are giving power, and in light of the fact, if we can't have that, then we should get another nominee. That's all, because I just believe in transparency. I find that issue extremely troubling. And what you'll see on Twitter is to say, well, he's given away, he's provided more documents than, you know, Elena Kagan. It's true, but it's not about number, it's about whether we have all, so that we can make so we can exercise good judgment. And I would like to see Bush, you know, lift the executive privilege on that document. And it's a very important privilege. Look, people who work for the White House want to be able to give advice freely to the president without worrying that it's coming out later. But if he's worried about that, and I get it if he's worried about it, that's fine. But then we really need somehow, because we're giving power. We're not lending. This is not a congressman or a senator or a president. We're giving. And this one is particularly volatile. This decision, we need to send the right message out to the American people that here it is. Whether you like them or not, here's everything. At least lay it out. Everyone quit taking sides, though. But you know, get a fair look. Here it is. Because this is also a justice. This isn't like Gorsuch, who replaced Scalia, conservative, or or let's say if Clarence Thomas, people think he's going to retire, a conservative. This is replacing Justice Kennedy, the swing vote. So this one is particularly important, because this one is going to really rev everybody up. Because this one is because we have so many 4 or 5 decisions that because of where we are in history and who it is, we need all the information. But that also means when we get the information that we use good judgment, not just take sides and not use it. We don't weaponize the information, but rather that we read it and look at it and weigh it.
I agree. So speaking of releasing information, former Attorney General Eric Holder said recently that President Trump's decision to release national security files on Carter Page is, quote, a dangerous abuse of power, unquote. Other legal officials are saying the same. Would you summarize the event? I mean, is this an abuse of power by releasing information that might compromise intelligence sources?
Well, first of all, I don't want to ever jeopardize intelligence sources. I think they can be redacted to cover that up. I like transparency, and I don't. and frankly, I will tell you this, I haven't read into this very much, but just as a fundamental matter, you can always redact it to hide sources. They over-redact everything in this country, though. Everything's classified that they don't want you to see. Even it's just embarrassing. So I tend to like transparency, and I think you can redact it. I don't want to hurt sources, though, at all. Don't want to. But the other thing too is that there is some sort of irony about you can tell who the Democrats are in the media, because the Democrats in the media and the journalists are appalled by this, when all we do is try to get sources all the time. We've been trying to get this information, and now suddenly all those, can you believe it? Can you believe Trump? Trump did that? Meanwhile, we've all been trying to get that information. So it's sort of look, everyone, we all need to take a deep breath, go in the corner and take a look at ourselves first. But anyway, it's we've been trying to get it.
So you've been a tireless advocate for the First Amendment, and I read recently where you said that we need to take a lot more interest in protecting journalists here in this country. What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, there's so many issues. First of all, we are so lucky in this country. We have the free press. I've traveled the world. Right now, there are 2 Reuters reporters, for instance, in prison in Myanmar because they had the audacity to investigate mass graves of the Rohingya. And when they were investigating, the police said, meet us for dinner. They went to meet them for dinner, and the police said, here are these some documents you might want to use. They passed them at the table at dinner. They get up after dinner, they walk outside, and then they arrest them for having documents, confidential documents. And the person who provided this information, besides the 2 reporters, is one of the police officers involved in it. So, it's pretty much, they got 7 years. 7 years for that, these 2 Reuters reports. So we in the United States, that doesn't happen to us. We are so lucky. That First Amendment, freedom of the press is extraordinary. But it's also something that, because we have a special privilege, a special responsibility, I think, for the American people. I have a lot of problem with what's going on in TV news organizations. I've been at 3, and that when I don't know if this digresses or answers your question or not, but that when you sign contracts with them, what's typical is you sign long contracts and they pay us well and everything else, but you have a non-disclosure, an NDA agreement, where you agree not to disclose stuff. And I always signed them. I'm a lawyer. I got 2 law degrees now. I signed them because when I signed them, I didn't sign them to be part of some conspiracy to hide bad conduct or to to do anything rotten.
I always thought that was because we were in the green room and we couldn't talk about what we heard in the green room.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think that it's not like Coca-Cola where you sign it so you don't give the recipe to Pepsi, right? It's like, and I thought to myself, what in the world? This is after all this has exploded. I think, what in the world could you possibly need an NDA at a news organization? The only thing I can come up with is this, is if 2 executives meet, let's say I met with 2 executives and say, don't tell anybody, don't tell the other network, but we're going to start a show in December on giraffes, and we don't want anybody else to do it. And so go, okay, I'll keep that quiet, because you don't want the competition to beat you out with a show on giraffes. That's the only possible thing. But instead, what these NDAs have been used have been to silence people, and typically to silence the women. And the thing that's so appalling to me is that these have been used to muzzle women. Now think about it. I've signed these, so I've been muzzled, and yet I've also been paid to talk. So isn't that sort of weird that a news organization that wants transparency from the government and wants all the information, but they don't talk about us. Don't talk about us. And I find it appalling that these NDAs are being used by news organizations. I understand for Pepsi or for Coca-Cola and for corporations or for whatever, but because we have this special privilege in the Constitution where we're protected on free press, I think we have an added obligation, the American people, to be transparent ourselves. We have to quit hiding what's going on behind our doors at the news organizations.
I agree with you. I can tell you a lot more about that. But
oh yeah, there's a lot.
I've signed those agreements as well, and trust me.
But none of us signed it to be part of some scheme to hide stuff. To hide bad conduct.
Especially when you're paid to be a partisan. You were not paid to be a partisan. I was paid to be a partisan.
I was.
And that's even more difficult.
Well, I was paid just to call it like I saw it, and it's like I wasn't paid to I'm not to be muzzled. I mean, but it's like, I mean, not to be told what to do. I mean, but anyway, we digress.
Well, how did you transition from a legal career, a very successful legal career, to journalism? Because now I see you as a journalist. I don't see you anymore. When I first met you, I saw you as this lawyer.
Well, I actually love practicing law. It's a tough business, though. I can't believe I had way too much responsibility at a young age. TV is actually so much easier because when I was practicing law, I had people's lives in my hands. I mean, people could go to jail. They could lose their houses. They were going through tough times. I mean, and I was doing this in my 20s and early 30s. I mean, TV is like I can say something stupid. I can embarrass myself. I can be taken out of context. I can look dumb. But all of that stuff doesn't, that's just me. It doesn't hurt anybody else. Actually, practicing law, it's a huge responsibility. It's an incredible responsibility, and it's tough. And I admire people who stick it out, because you meet people in times of their greatest need. But having said that, is that I will tell you the short version is that I tried a lot of murder cases, handled sexual assaults, a lot of outs in the District of Columbia, and there are no cameras in the courtroom because the District of Columbia, I did some cases in federal, but most in Superior Court, which is a semi-federal court. There are no cameras there. And so when I try a high-profile murder case, is that the local TV would sit outside the courthouse, and they'd follow me from the courthouse door to my 5th Street I was a Fifth Streeter, which if anything you know about, I was a Fifth Streeter. I very proudly say I was a Fifth Streeter. But anyway, so I knew the local media. I knew the camera crews. And so then in about 1990, Marion Barry, our mayor here, got himself into a little bit of a fix. And this was over in the federal court, but there had no cameras there. And they needed someone at the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock news to explain what cross-examination was. Any lawyer could have done it, but the crews knew me from chasing me, and I got to know them and everything. So I would stand outside the courthouse, and I'd say cross-examination is blah, 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 or something. Thank you for joining me, and then do it the next night. So that was in about June and July of 1990. And then in November, CNN called the American Bar Association and asked, should I tell the true story?
Yeah, tell the true story.
I don't know, that's bad. The CNN called the American Bar Association. This is what I know, how I remember it. This is why memories are always very bad, and this is why these old charges are so dangerous, because if you fact check me, you might find that I'm wrong, but this is what I believe, okay? But anyway, they called the American Bar Association, and they were looking for someone to do gavel-to-gavel coverage on the William Kennedy Smith case. William Kennedy Smith case was one of the Kennedy family relatives who, in April, before the Marion Barry trial, had been arrested in Florida for rape. And Teddy Kennedy was a witness, and there's all this big thing. But CNN was going to do their first gavel-to-gavel coverage, and they called the American Bar Association, and American Bar Association recommended me. And so I went over there. I did the legal analysis. Ratings were through the roof, as you might imagine. The first time anyone did gavel-to-gavel coverage, because there hadn't been cameras in the courtrooms for 50, 60, 70 years since the Lindbergh trial, when people sneaked movie cameras in and got into a whole bunch of fuss then in the 20s or 30s. But anyway, the ratings were not high because of me, but because of the nature of the story. It had politics, it had sex, it had money, it had Palm Beach, and everything. So CNN then kept asking me to do things, and then when the O.J. Simpson trial case started, naturally I was there with CNN, so I kept doing things, and you know about the O.J. Simpson case. All right, now, here's the question though. Why did the American Bar Association recommend me? Okay, this is what I thought for 15 years, is because at the time is that I had a little TV experience. I'd been doing the Marion Barry stuff. Nobody had any TV experience. I mean, nobody, because there hadn't been any trials on TV. So, my little thing on the courthouse step is like, that was like a wealth of experience. I had tried tough cases. I had handled these as a lawyer. This was my bread and butter. I did a lot of violent crime. So that was, I had 2 law degrees. That looked pretty good. So I looked good on paper. Mm-hmm. Even if I was an idiot, I looked good on paper.
Okay.
And I taught at Georgetown Law School as an adjunct professor, so why not me, right? I seemed perfect. All right. 2000, about the year 2000, I get a call from the ABA asking if I would serve on a panel in London, and they would pay for me to go to London. And I thought, they pay for my flight for some panel. I was going to be on the panel with Tony Blair's wife.
Oh,
I thought, oh my
she's a
God.
lawyer.
Right. I thought, I'm from Wisconsin. A kid from Appleton, Wisconsin is going to be on a panel with Cherie Blair. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And also the ABA was calling me. Now, ABA, when I was a young student, young lawyer, I couldn't pay the dues. I wasn't a member of the American Bar Association. It was like $700. And as I was doing indigent defense work. I made $12,000 a year. So there's no way I was going to be able to pay. I was never a member of the ABA. I couldn't afford it. You know, I didn't mind. So I was quite flattered that they called me to go over to London. So I go over to London to this conference, and I walk in, and they're handing out name tags. So I sort of shyly go up to this. I'd been on CNN. I did my own show on CNN by the time, but I felt a little bit uncomfortable. I didn't know anybody. And the woman's handing out name tags. So I said, I'm Greta Van Susteren. And and the woman said, I know who you are. And she had an American accent. So naturally, I knew she was an American. So I said, oh, and I thought, she said, I said, so you've seen my show on CNN? She said, no, I know you. And she said, don't you recognize me? And I looked at her and I said, well, you look familiar. Okay. I was like desperate.
I know that one.
And I was in terror. And she said to me, that she said, I'm the receptionist at the American Bar Association, and I'm the one who recommended you to CNN. And I thought to myself, oh, I'd sort of thought it was all these lawyers and judges going into this cherrywood room and looking at all these applications and saying, this is the one, she's perfect.
Well, she saw you on the local news?
She saw me on the local news. So I was grateful. So I said to her, oh, wow. I said, well, thank you very much, because you really changed my life. And she really did, because, TV's fun. It's exciting. You get a ringside seat. And she said to me, but don't you recognize me? Yeah. And I said, you look familiar. And then she told me how we knew each other. And I almost died. And I remember, as soon as she started telling me, I remember back in 1976, I came to Washington to go to Georgetown Law School, and I was somewhat of a shy kid. I was from Wisconsin, and everybody else at Georgetown seemed to come from Ivy League. I didn't even know what Ivy League was, I didn't know what it was, but they were all, and a bunch of the students lived in a group house, and she also lived in the group house too. And so she knew a bunch of law students, and they had a big party. And it was only time I've ever done this, it was a toga party. So I went over to this party feeling very, very shy, wrapped in a sheet like an idiot. And I walked in, and she was just sitting there by herself, wrapped in a sheet. And so she looked a little, so I sat down and talked to her. And we sat and drank beer together all night long, just talking, exchanging stories. And then I left. But anyway, it was so I'm on TV because of a toga party. So that's the real story. That's how I remember it. But anyway, so I don't recommend it. It's sort of, like if you're looking for careers, I don't recommend that you just go on stalk, local toga parties. But I don't even, has anyone here, you ever been to a toga party?
No, I would never wrap myself.
Well, I wouldn't either now. I wouldn't either, but when you were 25, when you're 25?
No, I drank a lot of beer, but never in a white sheet.
Well, actually, it was colored. It was colored.
All right.
It was colored.
Yeah.
I had it had designs on it, but it just shows you how funny life is. How life just turns out. You said, you have no idea. I was happy being a criminal defense lawyer. I liked it. I felt proud to stay. The one thing about practicing law is at the end of the day, you really felt like, okay, I tried to do something for somebody. You tried. As TV is exciting and you get a ringside seat, and it's fascinating, you don't have that feeling, that personal sense of having done something for someone. And so I was actually happy practicing law.
So is our criminal justice system fair, especially fair to black men?
No.
Boys?
Okay, well, I'll be straight up and say, I won a lot of cases I shouldn't have. So that should tell you it's not fair, because there are a lot of people, and I worked hard, and I put the put the system to the test, and I won a lot of cases, and my clients did a lot of things that, but that was the way it works. It's beyond a reasonable doubt, presumption of innocence, and the prosecution has all the resources in the world. Now let's ask about whether it's fair. I will tell you this, I have no scientific way to show it, but most of my clients 95% of my clients were poor African American, 4% were poor whites, and 1% had a little money from Montgomery County, okay, that wandered over into the border. But that's the way it is. And I can't tell you why, but it was always easier to get probation for the white client. I can't tell you how or why, but it was always, is that you always worried more for your African American client. And it's not to say, I'm not saying that the judges were racist or something, but it's somehow baked into the system that back then when it's practiced law, I don't know what's like, I'm not in the courtroom now, but I'll tell you is that, and I can't put a number on it, I can tell you as a defense lawyer that I always worried more about getting probation for approximately the same offense.
Yes. Well, let me, I know some of the students may ask you more questions about that in a bit. We're going to open up for questions, so please get ready.
Have I said anything to get me in trouble yet?
No, not
Okay.
yet. Normally, I'm the one that gets in trouble, so you don't have to worry tonight. But you wrote a book about maximizing social media. What are your thoughts about how social media is affecting our democratic process, given what's happening today and the partisanship? What is social media doing to our ability to talk to one another and have some civility in our public discourse?
Well, I struggle with this because I like First Amendment, I like free speech, I don't want to muzzle anybody, and so I think to myself, look, the best sort of, maybe this sounds like optimistic, but is to saturate it with good stuff. There's a lot of good in social media. I think if we did Twitter is probably the worst, I think. Twitter is probably the nastiest. I think if I have no problem with taking away the anonymity on Twitter. I tweet in my name. I don't know why everybody else can't tweet in his or her name, because I tell you one thing, is when you put your name on it, you tend to tone it down a little bit. Yeah. I think people are a little more respectful, and I have no problem with Twitter said today is that you have to put your own name on it when you tweet, and then we'll deal with it then. But social media, it can be a wonderful tool. Like when I do a lot of work on the Rohingyas, my latest cause, the Rohingya refugees, is that I go in and I put hashtag Rohingya into the Twitter search, and I get all the recent stories. So it's a really fast, good search tool for me. So I really like it. And of course I read all the stuff about how awful I am. I mean, we all read that about how terrible we are, individuals. But it's like, to me, it's like I've read so, this is the good thing about being a public figure. You've read so many bad things about yourself that it doesn't, you become immune to it. Like, okay, so I'm stupid. It's like, so I'm all these horrible things. I mean, you get immune to it. The people who have not been used to being beaten up, I feel bad for them because they take it pretty hard. I just sort of laugh it off. I laugh it off. It's like, my husband doesn't like some of the things they're said about me, but that's my husband. But I just laugh off the stuff that's said about me. But for most people, it's really tough. It's and I think the way to sort of compensate for it's not perfect. It's not going to solve it. But if we at least tried to flood it with the good, robust debate, flood it with the good stories, put your pet pictures on it, do whatever, just flood the zone. I think that would be helpful, and take away the anonymity.
My last question, I have so many. I told Greta I did my research.
That made me nervous too. When I saw her doing all her research, I thought, what's she going to add?
Well, I want to talk about fake news, bias in the media. I mean, you've worked at Fox, you've worked at MSNBC, you've worked for the
I can't hold a job.
Trifecta.
I can't hold a job.
Trifecta. I mean, how do we discern what's true and what's false out there, and what can we do to get the news media, at least as one of the most important ingredients in our democracy, what can we do to get the news media back in the good graces of the American people?
Well, I don't know how the three cables recover, because there have been so many mistakes. Mm-hmm. And oddly enough is that I actually think that if ever there were a time for a new network to emerge, that this would be the time to do it, because I think that people are starving for something that they believe is credible. And I'm not, it's like, I'm not talking about the fair things, but also the unfair things that have been said about the networks have so poisoned the American people against the existing news. It's almost like we had to clean the slate and start over. That's not going to happen. But I think if someone came along with a significant amount of money who felt like, a commitment to facts and really separating a robust, fair debate from, reporting, that this would be the time in history to do that. Incidentally, the last time I saw that vacuum, I didn't see it, but I'm looking back at it, is in 1996 when Fox News was launched, because that was attempting to fill a vacuum, to take a look at news from a conservative viewpoint, because it was said that that it had been looked at from a liberal standpoint, and that was a vacuum, and Fox immediately rose up and did exceedingly well. I will say this about Fox News, and I get a lot of criticism because I was at Fox. I get a lot of criticism because I was at MSNBC. I get a lot of criticism because of all these networks. I mean, if you're a conservative, you hate me for being at MSNBC. If you're a liberal, you hate me for being at Fox. But if Fox is probably the biggest lightning rod, never once, actually once, I was at Fox 14 and a half years, and if you didn't like my show, if you thought it was unfair, blame me 100%. 100%. Because that show is 100% me. Nobody at Fox ever told me what to say or do. Not once in 14 and a half years, except for, this is sort of a funny story about Roger Ailes. And it's that one time is Roger Ailes did, and that was in 2004. I worked in D.C. Roger Ailes was up in New York. He's the boss. You never see me. He's like, everyone thinks that we're all sort of cozy. I never socialized with O'Reilly or Handy. I never went to a social. I mean, we all do our jobs.
Right.
Brett Baer had an office next to me for 14 and or not, but for a number of years. So I know Brett, but I didn't even socialize with Brett Baer. You do your job. But anyway, this is a funny story about Roger Ailes. I don't know what he said with the others, and I've certainly read all the stories about the women. So I've certainly read that. But this is just sort of one interesting story. Is that I was walking into Fox in D.C. in 2004. I'd been there. I'd started there February of 2002. Roger Ailes was coming out. I don't know if I ever saw him again in the bureau, ever. I mean, that's how weird it was. And as we were crossing in the glass doors, of course, I say hi to him. He's the boss. And he says, points at me and says, "Don't you dare report that Howard Dean, who was the Democratic candidate for president, son had just been arrested for stealing beer." And I said, I wasn't going to, but why? And he said, because every kid does it and you're going to ruin his life. And that's the only time. It's like, maybe I was an oasis that Roger never told me what to say or do, or I certainly wasn't going to take it. I was never going to, nobody ever bosses me around. Ask my family. But that was sort of a funny thing. That was the only thing in 14 and a half years.
It's a good one. So let's open it up for questions. Greta, just recently I took a position in my hometown newspaper in Louisiana against a decision made by the mayor where I grew up in Kenner. He had banned Nike products from the playgrounds in Jefferson Parish where I grew up, and I took a position. And the position, of course, was that he was wrong, and that I would take up the cause of raising money to ensure that these kids in Jefferson Parish had tennis shoes. What do you think about the Take a Knee movement led by Colin Kaepernick, the former San Francisco 49 quarterback?
First of all, guys, what a dumb thing for a mayor to do. The mayor's not king. Really? This is it. Look, race is so painful to all of us. In so many ways, we're all walking on pins and needles what to say and what to do. On the one hand, I wish I had some magic potion to try to turn the temperature down, and so that we would all, we could all talk about it. But it's like we're all so nervous about it. Most of you are African American. You don't know to talk as a white person, it's like you just don't even know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing that you're going to get wrong. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be misinterpreted. So I say this very dangerously. I'm a Green Bay Packer fan, and I own one share. She's a Saints fan. Yes. Her father was a real Saints fan. And it's like he's got a First Amendment right to do that, absolute First Amendment right. Okay, 100%, and I would defend his First Amendment right. But when I watch sports, I really don't want to be like arguing with people about politics. So that was my only thing about it. Is that, but I would defend his right to do it. But I wish we didn't have politics in sports. I'd like to have one safe haven. I'd like to have one safe haven. That's what I want. With all the things we're fighting about. But I would certainly defend his right to do it. But but as a fan, I don't want to be arguing with a sibling or a neighbor or something like that. I want to be arguing about whether that was a bad call and Aaron Rodgers got roughed up or something unfairly. I'd rather be arguing about that.
And then he came back to throw 3 touchdowns and beat the Bears. we watch each
but the big game that was this
weekend.
weekend, Falcons. Oh, the Falcons and the Saints. So but
that's why I'm going home.
Oh, of course.
Tailgate.
Of course. Do they wear togas at those tailgates?
No, we don't wear white sheets.
Oh, come on. Will you stop using that? Oh, will you stop using that again?
Yeah, I know.
I know. It's so mean to me. But can you understand the difficulty of these topics? It's like,
it is tough.
They're really
But
painful.
you gotta have trust. You gotta have dialogue. You have to engage with people. That's how you learn. But also, that's how you get your argument out.
You're so right about talking, because my executive producer is African American. And we have very frank conversations. I love these frank conversations where you can, we really lay it out there, so you can really talk. And he said to me, well, how would you like to be black and be in a meeting, and the best guest that you could book on the show happens to be black, and you don't want to say, let's pick the black, because everyone's going to look at it and think, oh, you just want it because he's black.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And it's the best. Everybody, we're all so nervous, when it just happens to be the best guest. Do you know what I mean? So all this stuff is so tough.
Right.
But so he feels a little bit, and I never realized, I haven't been in any meetings with him like this, but I never, never occurred to me, because we don't walk in each other's shoes.
This is going to be an interesting year in American politics. We didn't discuss this before, but as students get ready to ask you a couple of questions. Will we see another year to woman in American politics this year?
Another what?
A year to woman.
You mean women winning?
Yeah.
I think so. I think women are sort of revved up and energized and are going to go out there. But I don't think, by the way, I don't think that the numbers are, the women numbers on Trump, I don't think they're as low. I got a theory on that. Want my theory?
What's your theory?
I think, this is just my theory.
And you're referring to perhaps white women who gave Donald Trump the majority of his female vote, not black women, because 95% of black women voted for Hillary.
Yes, but that, I think a lot of that was party too. I mean, party. But I'm just saying that I think if a pollster calls you up and says, "Hi, I'm a pollster," and I go, "Who's this?" They say, "Do you like the guy with the potty mouth?" No, I don't like that guy with the potty mouth. I don't think people are honest with pollsters. They would say, why? I just think the polls are off. I think people are just telling pollsters whatever they want to hear, because they're complete strangers. It's not like they call up and they say, do you like Coke or Pepsi? I mean, they're asking, questions, and we're all walking very carefully right now.
So you think President Trump's approval rating right now is closer to 46%?
No, I don't know where.
And not 38?
I don't know. I'm just saying it's not as, I think people are, look, in Wisconsin, where I grew up, there had not been a Republican win since 1984. President Obama in 2008, I think, won by 14 points. And right. I think in 12, he won by about 12 points or 10 points. I mean, it was a big, huge. And Hillary didn't in 2016, didn't campaign there because everyone thought it was a lock. It was a lock. Well, the problem is that, and probably the polls, but I started talking to people, back in my hometown or something, and it didn't sound like it was a lock to me, because people were saying that they were basically sick and tired of the status quo. And Hillary happened to be the status quo because she was, she had been a first lady and she'd been a senator and she'd been in the cabinet and everything else. And so, but I think that a lot of the polling, I think when people were called, I don't think they were candid, because everyone was well aware of the fact that, that Trump was rather rough around the edges, let's say. I mean, some of those tweets. And, it's like, I don't think I'm going to say to a stranger that, I wouldn't say to a stranger necessarily I would ever support somebody, who might have said something terrible about something. I don't know.
It's
So
tear
strange.
the party. I warned the Clinton campaign that Donald Trump was a celebrity and that his apprentice program was basically a primetime hit.
In Wisconsin? Or
Yeah,
all over Wisconsin?
across the country. I just thought that people ignored, I thought the campaign ignored some of those voters. And Trump was a disruptor, and he was able to go right up the middle. He had a little help in my judgment, but that's another
But,
conversation.
Hillary's sort of interesting. I traveled 8 times overseas with Hillary Clinton when she was Secretary of State. And I have never seen a woman work so hard in my life. She worked really hard. And we'd go into these places, and she'd know, and we'd be in Pakistan, and we'd arrive, we're all bleary-eyed, and we just want to go to bed, and Hillary's got to go to 3 bilaterals and 2 dinners and everything else. And she would know all these generals' names and everything like it was incredible. But then she'd get on the campaign trail, and I'd go, who is that?
Yeah.
She was, I don't know if she was just so tightly wound and not wanting to make a mistake because it was a foregone conclusion. But the person who was, I'm not saying you should vote for her or not vote for her. I'm just saying that the person you voted for, if you voted for her, is not the person I saw out across the world, and I've interviewed her a bazillion times, but I saw her at work, and she was a different candidate than she was a Secretary of State or Senator.
Senator, that's correct, and First Lady. You've interviewed President Trump, President Bush, Vice President Cheney. I can go on and on.
Not President Obama, but Senator Obama. President
That's
Obama
right.
would not do Fox News.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Okay, and not only would he not do Fox News, but this is what I was told. This is what I was told, is that the reason why I interviewed Hillary Clinton in Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Mexico, Germany, I don't know where else, but all over the world. The reason I was told, I don't know if this is a fact, but the reason I was told is that the Obama White House wouldn't let her do an interview with Fox News on American soil. And so that's why I had to chase her around the world. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I was told. And she was always willing to do an interview with me because I was always, and I will say this with great pride, I was able to get Republicans and Democrats at Fox, and over at MSNBC, I was able to get Republicans and Democrats. I'm polite. I hope I ask blunt questions. I go right to the point. I don't have an axe to grind. I happen to like people, so I'm not trying to show I'm the smartest person in the room. I'm not, but I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just trying to get information. So, but anyway, so Senator Obama, when he was running, he wanted to be on my show.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about John McCain, the former Senator John McCain. You had him on your show quite a lot. Mm-hmm. What was your relationship with John McCain?
It was totally professional, but what I had this Chinese wall with John McCain is that back in about 2000, I don't know when it was, is I met his mother, and at the time I thought she was Roberta McCain. At the time I thought she was old. She was like 90 or something. Well, she's now 106 and a half. And I found her quite intriguing because I like people who are different than I am, and she's different than I am in that she grew up in a whole other generation. Crazy different than I am. It's like, just why? It's like, they even used to tell me about things they call late dates. Is that when you go out on a date, like on Saturday night, you'd have your first date was your early date, and then you have a second date after that, late dates. Just interesting sort of times. And so anyway, she lives about 2 miles down the road from me in D.C., so I started having coffee with her every Sunday. We have coffee every Sunday, and we continue to have coffee every Sunday, and so I always kept a Chinese wall and didn't bring John McCain into it because, it's a little bit, a little too close or something. But anyway, so Roberta McCain and I are best friends. She's 106 and a half. She says I'm an angel. Every time I go over there, she says nice things about me. It's not like Twitter. So I especially like it. But anyway, so I'm very close to his mother.
It's funny because I met his mother at hair cuttery. I would go over to hair cuttery on Connecticut Avenue, and this woman would scream at me, "Don't do anything to your hair. Let it go gray." Now, meanwhile, she was getting her hair dyed. And she told me to let my hair go gray. And I went over to Lil, my stylist, and said, "Who the hell is that woman?" And she said, "That's Roberta McCain, John McCain's mother." And I said, "Oh, my God. Now I know where he gets it from."
Yeah,
just very blunt, but one of the nicest people in the world.
But she's so elderly. But do you know who she knew? This is just so weird. She knew Amelia Earhart.
Yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me? It's like, no, it's like her older sister was married to a guy who started an airline in Southern California, like the first airline, and there's this whole sort of airline community, and Amelia Earhart was part of it. But I mean, it's like she's fascinating. It's like, and I always say things. I say to her, okay, well, I'm going to Pakistan next week. I'll be back, in a week, something. She goes, oh, the Lahore Gardens, or the Shalimar Gardens in Lahore are so beautiful. And I go, you been there? Oh, a couple times. She's been all over the world. Wherever I went, she could trumpet.
Well,
not trumpet, but you know.
I have a McCain story. John McCain, when I was a young student lobbying for the King holiday, John McCain was elected to the House. He was a no vote on the King holiday. He was a no vote on the original King holiday because his state was a no vote. But he said, I am a no vote because my state is a no vote, but keep coming back. I kept going back to John McCain, even when he went to the United States Senate. I got a call from John McCain about a decade ago, and he said, I'm going to Memphis. And I said, why are you going to Memphis? He was going to tell the world that he was wrong, and that all these years, he knew he was wrong and vote no. But during that time, he had helped to transform Arizona to become a yes state. And also, John McCain had also worked with a local black organization to get the first African-American radio station on the air in Phoenix. But he personally called to tell me that he was going to Memphis, and I connected him with Bernice King and the King family because he was a yes. I believe the entire time he was a yes, but he never wanted to be out of step with his state. And so when I told his mom that her son had called me and he was a yes vote, she said, I knew that boy would do the right thing.
So she said, oh, good for her. She's a piece of work.
She's a character. And she has, at 106, she's feisty.
Can I just get one last thing about this Supreme Court stuff that I want to mention? I don't know if any of you know this, because you're a little younger than I am in the room, but in 1987, I think it was, Ronald Reagan nominated Judge Ginsburg to be a Supreme Court justice to replace, who was it to replace?
Wasn't Rehnquist, no.
Powell.
Oh, yeah, it was Powell.
And the reason why he's now in the Supreme Court, you'll find this interesting, and how things change, is because it came out during the hearings that he had smoked marijuana in college. And also a little bit as an associate professor at Harvard. And that was a disqualifier. That's how things change. And I mean, like, you all laugh, but then it was like, oh my God.
I got a story. You ready for my story?
What?
All right, so 1987, I decided that I wasn't going back to work for Reverend Jackson. Dick Gephardt had asked me to be his deputy campaign manager. And for whatever reason, I was always the person that, during the '84 crisis, we learned about Gary Horton having an extramarital affair.
Yeah, he said, come follow me to the media, and they did.
And they did. So I was always the staff person that would go and ask the question, have you had an extramarital affair?
No, you had to do that?
I did that. And so, of course, when the drug thing came up in '87, after Ginsburg, I was working for Dick Gephardt. Dick Gephardt, well, he's probably one of the cleanest politicians I've ever worked for in my entire life.
He likes that, too.
He looks it, too. No eyebrows. And so I went up to, at the time, I went up to Congressman Gephardt from the 3rd Congressional District of Missouri. I'm his deputy campaign manager. I said, Congressman, I got to ask you some tough questions. So, of course, I asked him all about sex.
You did?
Of course. The guys
God.
always put me up.
See, I would have slipped him a note or something.
When you hire the first, you talk about bringing in women and minorities. I'm both. And so you bring a woman in, they're like, well, if Donna get fired, who cares? She's just whatever. So I said, have you had sex outside of marriage? No. Have you had any extramarital? No. And he said, Jane was the first woman he pinned. And I said, how did you pin her? Why did you pin her?
You didn't know Pinman?
No.
You didn't know Pinman?
No. Okay.
I know that was meant.
Okay, well, see, you're a little older than me. I didn't know. But then I had to ask him about, I said, have you ever smelled grass? He said, grass? Yeah, pot, reefer. Then I did like a joint.
You need to explain what pinned is, though, this crowd.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell him that. And I said, reefer, grass, pot, everything I knew. And he said, cannabis. I said, what the hell is cannabis? I'm was asking this man about drug use, and he told me cannabis. So now I know what cannabis is. All right, with that, let's ask some questions.
Wait, no, PIN. You got to explain PIN.
Well, that was the first time he had a date and was able to get past first base.
No, I thought PIN meant, you know what I thought you were talking about?
What?
No, it's like, it used to be in the 40s and 50s, you give him your PIN.
Well, that is the legal, technical
Well, I'm sorry,
definitions.
he used that word?
Yeah, but I use my word. I said, oh, you
I can't imagine.
It's
him-
like the hookup today.
I can't
By the
imagine.
way,
I can't
I was-
imagine he would ever talk to you about
Greta,
this.
I was called the OG the other day. You know what an OG is?
Old gal?
No, I said
What's OG?
OG, old guard. I said, I thought it was an offensive. They said that's a good term.
what
So
is
you're
it?
an OG now.
What's the OG?
I'm an OG.
What is it?
I'm part of the old guard, but it's a good thing.
Can I tell you about your old boss?
Which
your
one?
old
I
boss,
got many.
Gore.
Oh, Al Gore?
Gore. Okay, marijuana was a big deal. I mean, like, I'm not kidding. Marijuana was you talk
Huge
about this.
deal in
This
this- oh
we're
my
now
God.
we're going through. It was such a huge disqualifier. Is that he said that he experimented, and I used to always, every time I saw Gore, I'd think like, oh, he's wearing a white coat and like in a lab experimenting. He just experimented. He didn't smoke it. He experimented.
Well, Clinton didn't inhale. So.
Clinton inhale, right? They were all running from it like it was the plague. And now, I mean, now it's legal in places.
Yeah.
When I grew up, in my hometown, it was a felony, you know. But anyway, the times change.
Yeah, the Washington Post, when Eleanor Holmes Norton was running for Congress, they gave a list of questions and they had one about marijuana because her opponent had been accused of growing marijuana at law school or whatever school he went to. And I said, NA. I mean, come on, Eleanor? She doesn't know how to relax. Anyway, those were the days. Any questions? Yes, sir. Please give your name and, oh, thank you,
Is this
sir.
going to be hard?
No.
Okay.
Look, he has on a sweatshirt.
I know it
There
says
you go.
Howard. He's a bison.
Yeah, he's a good bison.
Good evening. My name is Richard Longtime, political science major from Seaford, Delaware. First off, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to hear you speak. My question would just be, what advice do you have in terms of criminal justice reform, and what direction do you see it going in the current political environment?
That's a great question about my advice. Obviously, you know, there's never any simple solution for anything, but I actually think we need more examples in the community. I think, you know, if you get out there and, you know, you become a huge success in your field, I think that's a sense of inspiration for other people, and you reach back down and you help the communities. Look, you know, we got to do something about education in this country. We got to make sure it's fair. We got to make sure it's inspired. But you know, some of these areas and some of these cities, like you go over to Baltimore, there's some pretty rough neighborhoods, and they have no hope. But if you get out there and they see that you're a roaring success and that you do things well, and then you come back to the community, I mean, you've got a lot of these great. I love when the athletes reach back. I love it because they show up that, you know, people, they give people a chance, give people hope. So I think that's the best thing you can do. In terms of the actual sort of reform, look, you just, as more and more people, you know, get involved in the system, be more involved in juries, be more involved as judges and lawyers, you're going to see more of that reform. But it's, you know, it's not going to come fast.
Should we ban the box to check off? Because I'm hearing from employers, from the National Association of Manufacturers to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that one of the problems they're having in filling these jobs is that people have nonviolent criminal arrest records, and they're well qualified for the job, but they're worried that when they have that box and people check it, that they don't get through the background checks.
Well, I think we get rid of that. But you know what else I'd get rid of? And this probably I shouldn't say in this room. I think we should get rid of that you have to have a college degree to apply for these jobs. There are a lot of really smart people out there who can't go to college. They don't have the money. And so we're not giving them a chance to lift themselves up. But, you know, like, look, college is great, but you guys are all lucky that you're here, and that's great. And I was lucky I could go. It's like when I went, my tuition was $284 a semester, by the way. How about that?
$1,400 at
Mine's
LSU.
$284 at Wisconsin. But, you know, a lot of, you know, it's like, you know how things change. It's like, just think about it. You want to learn something, you pick up your phone and you tap it in. We wanted to learn something, so we had to get out of bed, get dressed. We had to, you know, get on our bicycle, drive down to the library, ride down to the library, go into the library, find a place to sit down, go to the card catalog, dig through the card catalog, go to get the book, and then the book wasn't there. You know. So I mean, you
and
guys.
the typewriter, remember,
Oh, yeah.
with the paper that you had to do a double copy before the amendment?
Oh yeah, it's terrible. But anyway, my point is this: is that you all are learning at a faster pace than we are, and you're in college, so you're really learning at fast. But so are the people who can't go to college. They're learning at a fast pace too. And I think the fact that so many employers require college degrees is holding back an awful lot of opportunity and a lot of smart people. So I'd get rid of. There's no box for colleges here, but I'd get rid of that box on violent crime. But I would also encourage employers, not to make that a prerequisite, because take a look, because there are a lot of really good, smart people.
Next question. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Kelsey Johnson. I'm a journalism major, political science minor. I just have a question for you. You talked briefly about Colin Kaepernick, and I was wondering what you thought about him suing the NFL.
Well, first of all, as a lawyer, Mark Garrigus is an old friend of mine. I know Mark very well. I haven't followed his lawsuit, so I really don't know anything about it. I just heard recently, though, I think Oakland might be picking him up or something.
Yeah.
But I actually think that he's going to make a rebound on his career. I think that I think one of the best things about quarterbacks, and this may be way beyond my expertise, is that you got to be able to lead. And I think he's got a lot of people who support him, and he may be able to sort of help in locker rooms. I think in the beginning that he divided locker rooms. There's a problem, but I think things have changed a little bit. But if he can play, I think that have at it. If he can play. I don't know why he was cut. Was he cut because of the kneeling, or was he cut because he wasn't performing? That I don't know. What was it?
I think because of the kneel, and that's my view. He's a great quarterback, and by the way,
he grew up in Wisconsin. Just pointing out, he's from Wisconsin. Okay. Not that everyone's asking that, right? Wasn't that the question? Where did he grow up?
Well, I've reached out to his agent and to try to get him here on campus. He is in the process of writing a book, and of course he's leading this Nike campaign. I don't know if you've seen the latest. The latest is please vote, just do it. So, and Nike is doing very, very well.
See, he's at a. This could have gone either way with him, I think. This could have been like this, and I actually thought that that's where it was headed. But I think that he's actually acting as an inspiration. I want anyone who inspires. And I encourage anybody who inspires. If he can make young people, especially young African American males, feel inspired. Because that's where a lot. I mean, if you look at the demographics, it's been very hard for the young African American male in this country. Is that fair? Fair. Okay, fair. And so if he can inspire, I think that's fair. If he can go into a locker room as a sportsman, I don't want him to go into any locker room the Packers are playing against. But if he can on a serious note, if he can lead in a locker room, I think he'll be a force on the football field.
Okay.
But I don't know. What do I know? I'm just a shareholder in the Green Bay Packers. $200 doesn't let me do anything but mouth off.
Next question. I got two over here. Thank you. I want to make sure we're sticking close to the time. I'm looking at the provost also. We're okay on time. Good.
Hi, my name's Naya Farrington. I'm a freshman nursing major from Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And my question is, how do you think advocacy and activist groups like Black Lives Matter have had an impact on politics in the past 5 to 10 years?
Well, when you said Chapel Hill, I just said, because I have relatives there, and I pray and hope that your family is doing well and able to cope through all of the torrential rain and flooding that has occurred down in North Carolina.
Can I say about the nursing things? I get jealous. Because the nursing is a great career, because you can go any place in the world. You can work on like all these NGOs around the world,
yes, you can.
And you can see the world and help people. So it's like, I always say that. Black Lives Matter, I'll give you that one.
I think it has been, at first, I didn't understand it. I mean, not the movement quality, but I didn't understand the tactics of the leadership in terms of trying to build a movement. I didn't know. A movement takes several things. You need organizational support, you need a crisis, but you also need to have some sense of direction. But I think over the course of the last 2.5 years, 3 years, it has really defined itself as a movement for change, a forward-looking movement that is not just responding to incidents, but really coming up with a more sustained platform to deal with criminal justice reform, as well as some of the other important issues that we're tackling out there. So I wasn't critical, because I understood what was happening, but I didn't know where Black Lives Matter would go 2.5, 3 years ago. You can imagine you chair the Democratic Party and people are screaming at you, and I'm like, why are you screaming at me? I'm not the enemy. But the system is the enemy. And I said, okay, well, I get it, but what do you want me to change within the system so I can make it better or stronger? I don't want to just attack because I can attack. I want to figure out ways to strengthen and to build a more strategic outlook for Black Lives Matter. So I've been very eager to work with them and work with the leadership. I've mentored several of the leaders. I've had people over to my house, and as chair of the Democratic Party, I invited them over to my office because I want to engage. Advocacy is very important. When I sit here with Greta and I have been friends for over 30 years. I don't look as old as I used to look. I'm trying to look younger since I'm on this campus. But I have to tell you, I have been an advocate all my life from the time I was 9 years old. And when I saw myself 2 weeks ago, engaging in a conversation with people in my hometown about what was happening with the boycott, at first I'm like, why do I have to do this? I'm 58 and some change. But then why not? And to see the young activists in my community now galvanized, and the young council member galvanized and educated and being the advocate, I can't wait to go home and make some gumbo. I got a vegan-style recipe for Thanksgiving, by the way.
Good.
Because Greta doesn't like all my ingredients because
I did. 2 years ago, I just changed. I did 2 years ago.
Yeah, well, because I cook with grease. And sometimes it's a little yummy, but not good for your tummy. I'm going home and get my boudin sausage and my fresh shrimp and my crabs and okra so I can come back and stir it up for Thanksgiving. But I encourage young people to get involved. The fact that I can talk about my experiences in the King Holiday struggle, the experience of being there in 1991 when Anita Hill was not going to be heard, but being the advanced person to march across the tarmac. You got to be engaged. You got to be an advocate. You got to be on the front lines.
Can I tell you sort of a white viewpoint? This
Yes.
is maybe it's just mine. Is you feel left out. Being white, it's like when people are so passionate about Black Lives Matter, you feel like blacks are looking at you like you're bad because you're white. And it's sort of because you don't know what to do. It's very difficult because I don't know what to say. Of course, Black Lives Matter, and of course, I've spent my life. That's what I represented. I did civil rights work, representing poor African Americans for making $12,000 for 12 years, and so I feel like everybody looks at me like, well, you're white. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And I think I would like to figure out a way to make it more inclusive so that we were all sort of saying it together. Do you know what I mean? Instead of, that's...
But Greta, as somebody who's seen your career up close and personal, when there was an earthquake in Haiti, you didn't sit around and wait for somebody to say help. You reached out, and there's a school there. You're helping young people get back on their feet. You're all over in terms of.
I know, but
I understand the white part.
You don't know what to say. You honestly, it's not that we're, that you're white, you're insensitive or anything like that, but you just don't know what to say. It's of course Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. And I don't know what to say. I think it really behooves all of us to figure out how to make Black lives, in some of these areas, some of these pockets of the country, so they have equal opportunity, and have the inspiration and the chance, and to achieve so much that for so many decades have been held back. But it's like I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Well, that's an honest answer, and people appreciate that. We got time for another question. One more? Oh, good. Thank you.
All right. Before anything else, thank you for such a thought-provoking political conversation. And hello, my name is Ambery Robinson, and I am a freshman mathematics major, Spanish and Afro-American Studies double minor from Miami, Florida. And my question is, for many impoverished, systemically oppressed minorities, sports are the outlets. Young adulthood is arguably the greatest time for political development and awareness. As the new environment allows for such growth, would you still argue your aforementioned statement that I wish we did not have politics in sports?
No, you raise a good point. Look, I don't dispute that. And I, when I was your age, so we were out protesting the Vietnam War. Look, I'm with you. I'm just, I guess that at my age is that I hate to see, I hate to see the pain that everybody's going through and all, and I'm sort of the, the family member that wants to keep everybody happy, that kind of thing. I totally defend the right to do it. As as I've been in courtroom defending First Amendment for things that believe me, that I never agreed with. I protesting at the White House. I used to represent nuns who chained themselves to the White House fence, and I thought, like, why are you doing that? But I mean, but they were trying to make a point. No, you make a valid point, and that happens to be a very effective megaphone because everybody's watching a sports event. I got it, and your viewpoint is not is not one that I'm the least bit dismissive. I think it's an important one, and I think probably maybe a little bit selfishly, I just want to watch sports. I don't want that, but I certainly respect and see the effectiveness of it. And if you're trying to make a change, you make the change in the biggest spotlight way you can. So I got that.
I don't think I ever felt as strong. I mean, I'm a former athlete. I used to tell my nieces and nephews that Auntie Donna body got into college, her brains got her out, because I was an athlete back during the day when Title IX came into enforcement back in 1973. I went to college in 1977 and graduated in 1981. I grew up at a time when Cassius Clay, Muhammad Ali was making a statement. I'll never forget when Jet and Ebony would come to the house, we had to fight over who would watch it, who would read it first. Because in addition to being a great boxer, he was our hero. He was taking on the system. My father talked about Jackie Robinson. When I first met Willie Mays when I was a little girl, I couldn't believe it, just meeting all of these historic figures, Arthur Ashe. All of these individuals who broke tremendous barriers to participation. So in many ways, the black culture has been about writers and athletes and political figures that have helped to transform our country. Each of them in their own way, using their talents, their God-given talents, to show that we're just like everybody else. We want to be just like everybody else. And so when I see people take a knee, I understand what they're protesting. I understand what issues they're raising. I don't see it as being offensive. I see it as being another, what I call, step in a long history of people taking up the cause of justice and equality. I watched the '68 Olympics when Brother Edwards and everybody did that fist, and here I was a little girl, I did my fist too. I didn't know what I was doing. And all I know is that when Nina Simone did Young, Gifted, and Black, I thought she was talking about me. The song was for me. I bought so many copies of that 45, I still have the vinyl. But the era of protest has been part of our history from 1619 to present. We've been trying to redefine black history in America to be part of American history so that we don't have to discuss it as a separate part, but it's part of America's history.
Yeah, the point, I mean, your point is well taken. I mean, like Jackie Robinson, I mean, it's unbelievable what he did through sports. I mean, he transformed so much and he endured so much. And so I don't necessarily disagree with you. Some people might take it as being disrespectful to the national anthem, and I got that. I think that I think it's something we should all talk about. I'll tell you one thing is that when you stood up and said mathematics, you know what the first thing I thought about was that, what's that movie?
Hidden Figures.
Best movie I ever saw. And I thought, like, that's the kind of inspiration. I thought, like, imagine if I were a freshman African American at Howard University and I saw a movie like that.
And she's still alive.
She's still alive.
She's
I mean,
still alive.
So I guess that, it's like there's without any doubt, protest is important, and it has changed things. Look at John Lewis.
Yes.
I mean, look at me, who got clobbered in the head. And so, you're right in so many ways. You're right in so many ways. I'm just saying is that, like, for me, as I spend so much time in the in the battlefield. That is just like, maybe selfishly on Sunday, I don't want a little more, I don't want that. And maybe that's just me being selfish, but I don't want a statement. I just want to watch the sports. But that just may be me being selfish. And I don't in any way diminish the importance of the issue or the importance of the First Amendment or the importance of protest.
Well, Mr. Provost, thank you so much. And I want to also...
Did that answer it? Okay.
I want to thank all of you for coming this evening before the Provost. Thank everybody. I also want to thank the King Lecture Series, Gwen and Colby King. I want to thank Mr. Calvin Hadley, soon to be Dr. Calvin Hadley, and all of you for joining us. Next month, we're going to do a deep dive into the 2018 midterm elections. We have a historic number of African Americans running statewide across the country. You've heard of their names: Stacey Abrams, Andrew Gillum, Ben Jealous. But we're going to talk about the polls. We're going to look at the prospects of their winning their races, and of course talk about the importance of your vote, because your vote will matter this election season. So thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. And I also want to thank our guest, Greta Van Susteren, for being here on the campus of Howard University. Thank you, Greta.
Can I just thank, as long as we're thanking, I thought the questions were very thoughtful. And I really like the questions, make me sort of stop and think.
Thank you.
Again, Howard University, please join me in thanking Ms. Donna Brazile and Ms. Greta Van Susteren for that excellent program. We also want